I'm Riley, 28 years old and 5 months pregnant when my world shattered completely. My sister Natalie and I were always close but competitive growing up. I never imagined she'd deliberately push me down our parents' steep staircase just to prove I was lying about my pregnancy timeline. The worst betrayal? My parents backed her completely. "Family comes first, Riley. Drop the charges or you're dead to us," they said, even after she nearly killed my unborn baby. I chose to protect my child and cut them off completely. Before I share my story, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to follow my journey to rebuilding a life without toxic family members. Growing up in our middle-class neighborhood in Springfield, Natalie and I shared the kind of childhood that looked perfect from the outside. Our house on Maple Street with its white picket fence and neatly trimmed lawn represented exactly what my parents wanted, an image of the perfect American family. But behind closed doors, the dynamics were complicated. Natalie arrived 2 years after me, and from my earliest memories, there was always a sense of competition between us. Not created by us as children initially, but fostered by subtle parental favoritism that became increasingly obvious as we grew older. When I brought home straight A's in 4th grade, my mother Barbara nodded and said, "That's nice, Riley," before immediately turning her attention to Natalie's C+ in math with enthusiastic praise. "You tried so hard, sweetie. We're so proud of your improvement." My father Frank would ruffle Natalie's hair and take her for ice cream as a reward for working through her challenges. This pattern repeated throughout our childhood. My achievements were expected and barely acknowledged, while Natalie's smallest efforts received lavish attention. When I won the regional spelling bee in 6th grade, my parents skipped the ceremony because Natalie had a minor cold. "She's more sensitive than you, Riley. You understand, right?" became their constant refrain. The disparities extended to everything. On my birthdays, I received practical gifts like clothes and school supplies. For Natalie's celebrations, our parents transformed the house into themed wonderlands with expensive presents. At Christmas, the gift pile under the tree always leaned heavily toward her side. When I quietly mentioned the imbalance once, my mother pulled me aside and whispered, "You're a strong one, Riley. Natalie needs more support." I learned early to rely on myself. While other kids had parents attending every school event, I got used to scanning the audience and finding empty seats where my family should be. "Your sister had a bad day," or "Natalie wasn't feeling up to coming out tonight," became explanations I accepted without question. By high school, the pattern was firmly established. I maintained a 4.0 GPA, joined debate team, and worked part-time at the local library. Natalie struggled academically, had frequent emotional outbursts, and cycled through friend groups. My parents hired tutors, met with counselors, and adjusted their schedules around her needs while telling me, "You're doing fine on your own, Riley." When college acceptance letters arrived, I received a full academic scholarship to State University. My parents' response was predictable. "That's nice, you won't need our college fund. We can use it for Natalie since her options might be more limited." I nodded, already accustomed to this reality. College became my escape. I thrived in the marketing program, made genuine friendships, and for the first time, experienced life without the shadow of family dynamics. Meanwhile, Natalie enrolled in community college, but dropped out after one semester. My parents never mentioned her academic failure during our weekly calls, focusing instead on her new job at a boutique that really suits her creative spirit. During junior year, I met Noah in a marketing ethics class. We disagreed passionately during a debate about corporate responsibility, and afterward, he asked me to continue the discussion over coffee. That coffee turned into dinner, which evolved into the healthiest relationship I'd ever known. Noah came from a warm, supportive family. The first time he took me home for dinner with his parents, Eleanor and David, I felt almost uncomfortable with their genuine interest in my studies and career plans. They asked follow-up questions, remembered details from previous conversations, and treated me with a warmth that felt foreign. "Your parents must be so proud of you," Eleanor said one evening. I smiled and changed the subject. After graduation, Noah and I both found jobs in the city, me at a digital marketing agency and him at an engineering firm. We moved in together, built our careers, and after 2 years, he proposed during a weekend hiking trip. "You're the strongest, most determined person I've ever met," he said as he offered the ring. "I want to build a life with you." Our wedding was small, held in a botanical garden with close friends and select family. My parents attended but left early because Natalie wasn't feeling well. Noah's family danced until midnight, helped clean up, and embraced me as their own. 3 years into our marriage, with stable careers and our own condo, we decided to start trying for a baby. 6 months later, when 2 pink lines appeared on the pregnancy test, I cried with a mixture of joy and anxiety. Noah held me close, whispering, "You're going to be an amazing mother." We decided to share the news with our families at my parents' anniversary dinner. I was 8 weeks along, and we'd seen the heartbeat at an early ultrasound. That evening, seated around my childhood dining table, I took Noah's hand and announced, "We have some exciting news. We're expecting a baby in January." Noah's parents responded with tearful hugs and immediate questions about how I was feeling. My parents offered polite congratulations before my mother turned to Natalie, whose smile had frozen in place. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" she asked, prioritizing my sister's reaction to my life-changing news. "I'm fine," Natalie replied, her voice tight. "Just surprised Riley's jumping into motherhood so quickly. Aren't you worried about your career?" My father patted her hand. "It's okay to have mixed feelings, Natalie." I exchanged glances with Noah, whose jaw had tightened. Still, I maintained hope that once the pregnancy progressed, my family would come around. Maybe a grandchild would heal old wounds and create new connections. Maybe becoming an aunt would give Natalie a positive role in our lives. I couldn't have been more wrong. As my first trimester progressed, morning sickness hit me hard. Despite feeling constantly nauseated, I couldn't contain my excitement about the growing life inside me. Noah became my rock, holding my hair back during morning bathroom visits and researching pregnancy-safe foods that might stay down. Our first official ultrasound appointment at 12 weeks remains one of my most precious memories. The technician swirled the wand over my still flat stomach, and suddenly, there was our baby, tiny limbs moving, heart flickering rapidly on the screen. "Strong heartbeat," the technician smiled. "Everything looks perfect." Noah squeezed my hand so hard it almost hurt, his eyes wet with emotion. We left with a strip of ultrasound photos that I couldn't stop staring at. The next day, I met my best friend Zoe for lunch and proudly displayed the ultrasound pictures. "Look at my little bean," I gushed. "This is amazing, Riley." Zoe hugged me tight before pulling back with a curious expression. "How did your family take the news?" "Especially Natalie." I hesitated. They were surprised. "I think they'll warm up once it feels more real." Zoe raised an eyebrow. "Just be careful. Remember how Natalie reacted when you got engaged?" I did remember. Natalie had gone through a mysterious illness requiring my parents' full attention for weeks after our engagement announcement. It had resulted in my mother missing my bridal shower and my father questioning if we were rushing things. "It'll be different this time," I insisted. "This is their grandchild." But as weeks passed, Natalie's behavior became increasingly concerning. When we had planned a special dinner to reveal the baby's gender, a girl, Natalie accidentally mentioned it during a family phone call 2 days before. "Oh, was that supposed to be a secret still?" she asked innocently when I confronted her. "I thought everyone already knew you're having a girl." "Sorry." My mother immediately jumped to her defense. "She didn't mean any harm, Riley. Don't be so sensitive." At 16 weeks, when I excitedly shared that I'd felt the baby move, Natalie looked pointedly at my slightly rounded belly and said, "Aren't you gaining weight kind of fast?" My friend Leslie didn't show until she was like 6 months along. When I mentioned setting up the nursery, Natalie questioned if I was really ready for motherhood, given my workaholic tendencies. Each comment was delivered with wide-eyed innocence, always followed by my parents' gentle admonishments that I shouldn't take everything so personally. The situation escalated when Zoe and Noah's sister Melissa planned my baby shower. Natalie insisted on being involved despite showing no genuine interest in the baby. While helping my mother in the kitchen before the shower, I overheard Natalie's hushed voice. "Don't you think it's weird how the timing doesn't add up?" Riley said they started trying 6 months before getting pregnant, but now she's due in January? That means she would have gotten pregnant in April, not May like she claimed. I think she's lying about when she got pregnant. My mother's response made my blood run cold. I've noticed that too. The dates seem suspicious. I stepped into the kitchen, hands shaking. The baby is measuring slightly larger than average. The doctor adjusted my due date after the anatomy scan. Not that I owe anyone an explanation about my pregnancy. They both jumped, exchanging guilty glances before my mother forced a smile. "We're just chatting, honey. No need to get upset in your condition." From that point on, Natalie began actively spreading doubts about my pregnancy timeline to extended family. At a cousin's birthday party, I overheard her telling my aunt that Riley's story keeps changing about when the baby was conceived and suggesting there might be drama she's not telling us about. When I confronted Natalie directly, asking why she was spreading rumors about my pregnancy, she feigned innocence. "I'm just concerned, Riley. You seem really defensive about simple questions." I turned to my parents for support, but they shook their heads. "You know how you can be, Riley," my father said. "Always so black and white about things. Natalie's just processing this change in her own way. You're probably extra sensitive right now because of the hormones," my mother added, patting my hand condescendingly. That evening, after recounting the conversation to Noah, he set his jaw firmly. "I think we need to create some distance, Riley. This stress isn't good for you or the baby." Part of me knew he was right, but another part still hoped for the family support I'd always craved. "They're going to be our daughter's grandparents and aunt," I said weakly. "I want to give them a chance to be in her life." At my 20-week appointment, my obstetrician Dr. Chun noted my elevated blood pressure. "Everything looks healthy with the baby, but I'm concerned about your stress levels," she said. "High stress during pregnancy can contribute to complications." I nodded, blinking back tears as I explained some of the family tension. "Your priority right now is protecting your health and your baby's health," Dr. Chin said firmly. "Set whatever boundaries you need for that." Walking out of that appointment, I made a decision to maintain limited contact with my family while establishing clear boundaries. I would attend necessary family functions, but keep conversations neutral and brief. I would correct misinformation about my pregnancy directly, but calmly. I would prioritize my daughter's well-being above the approval I'd spent a lifetime seeking. I didn't realize how quickly those boundaries would be tested or how catastrophically they would fail. My father's birthday fell just as I entered my 5th month of pregnancy. Though my small baby bump was now clearly visible, I still felt relatively comfortable moving around. Noah had planned to accompany me to the family dinner, but an emergency at work kept him late. After much deliberation, I decided to attend alone rather than face the inevitable accusations of using the pregnancy to avoid family obligations. "I'll try to wrap up early and join you," Noah promised, kissing me goodbye. "Call me if anything feels off." Driving to my childhood home stirred a mixture of nostalgia and dread. The red brick two-story with black shutters had once represented safety, but now it symbolized the emotional tightrope I constantly walked with my family. My mother answered the door with a practiced smile. "Riley, you made it. Where's Noah?" "Work emergency. He might join later," I explained, stepping inside and inhaling the familiar scent of my father's favorite pot roast. "Well, at least you're here," she said, her gaze dropping briefly to my belly before she turned away. Natalie's setting the table. The dining room looked exactly as it had throughout my childhood. The heavy oak table, the china cabinet filled with my grandmother's dishes, the landscape paintings my mother had carefully selected to bring nature inside. Natalie stood arranging silverware, looking up with a tight smile when I entered. "Happy birthday, Dad," I said, handing my father a gift bag containing a limited edition of his favorite author's new book. "Thanks, kiddo," he replied, accepting it with a nod before turning back to the basketball game on TV. Dinner began cordially enough, with discussions about my father's work and local news. I relaxed slightly, thinking perhaps the evening would pass without incident. Then my mother asked about the nursery. "We've painted it sage green," I shared, allowing myself a moment of excitement. "The crib arrives next week." "Isn't it early to be setting up?" Natalie asked, cutting her meat with precise movements. "You're what, for months along?" "5 months," I corrected. "The doctor says everything's right on schedule." Natalie raised an eyebrow. "But you told everyone you got pregnant in May. If you're 5 months now in October, that would put conception in April." I finished for her. "Yes, the baby's measuring slightly ahead, so they adjusted my due date. That's completely normal." "So convenient how the dates keep changing," Natalie muttered. My father cleared his throat. "Let's not start this again, girls." "I'm not starting anything," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'm simply stating medical facts about my pregnancy." Natalie set down her fork with a clatter. "Medical facts that conveniently change whenever questioned. First you were due in February, then January, now it sounds like December. Were you pregnant at our cousin's wedding and hiding it? Is that why you wouldn't drink?" "That's enough, Natalie," my mother interjected, but her tone lacked conviction. "No, I want to understand," Natalie continued, her voice rising. "Because it seems like Riley's either lying about when she got pregnant or there's something else she's hiding. Maybe the baby isn't even Noah's." The accusation hung in the air like a physical threat. My hands trembled as I placed my napkin beside my plate. "I don't owe you explanations about my pregnancy," I said quietly. "But for the record, this baby is absolutely Noah's. We've been trying for exactly as long as we've said, and any date adjustments were made by medical professionals based on ultrasound measurements." "I'm leaving now." "So defensive," Natalie scoffed. "If you're telling the truth, why not prove it? Show us the actual ultrasound report with dates." "I shouldn't have to prove anything to my own family." My voice finally broke as I stood. "I'm going to get my purse from upstairs, and then I'm leaving." I headed for the staircase, a grand dark wood structure that dominated the home's entryway. As a child, I'd slid down its banister countless times until my mother forbade it as unladylike. Now, I gripped the smooth wood for support as I climbed, fighting back angry tears. In my old bedroom, I took several deep breaths, texting Noah, "Leaving soon." Natalie making accusations again. I grabbed my purse from the bed and turned to find Natalie standing in the doorway. "You can't just walk away when I'm talking to you," she said, stepping into the room. "I want to see your belly. Prove you're actually as pregnant as you claim." I stared at her in disbelief. "What?" "Show me your stomach. A real 5-month belly, not just bloating or whatever you're trying to pass off." "This is insane. I'm not lifting my shirt to prove my pregnancy to you." "That's what I thought," she sneered. "You're lying about something, Riley. You always need to be the center of attention, don't you? Perfect Riley with her perfect husband, and now a perfect baby." I moved toward the door. "I'm leaving. We can talk when you're willing to be rational." Natalie blocked the doorway. "Not until you admit you're manipulating everyone with this pregnancy story." "Move, Natalie." I try to step around her. What happened next plays in slow motion whenever I recall it. Natalie's face contorted with an emotion I'd never seen before, something beyond anger or jealousy, something almost feral. As I attempted to pass, she placed both hands on my shoulders and shoved hard. I remember the sudden weightlessness, the disorienting moment of my feet leaving the floor, the sick realization that I was falling backward toward the staircase. In that endless moment, my hands instinctively wrapped around my belly, trying to protect my daughter as my back and then shoulders slammed against the hard wooden steps. The tumble down felt endless. A jarring, painful sequence of impacts as I desperately tried to curl around my stomach. When I finally came to rest at the bottom, the pain was immediate and intense. A sharp cramping sensation wrapped around my abdomen as warm wetness spread between my legs. I looked down to see blood staining my light blue maternity jeans. "My baby," I gasped, the words barely audible. "Someone call 911. My parents rushed from the dining room, faces shocked as they took in the scene. "What happened?" my father demanded. Through the haze of pain and fear, I saw Natalie descending the stairs slowly, her face now carefully composed. "She tripped," Natalie said calmly. "I tried to catch her, but she fell too quickly." "No." I managed, the cramping intensifying. "She pushed me." She deliberately pushed me down the stairs. My mother knelt beside me, her expression conflicted. "You probably lost your balance, honey. Pregnant women can be clumsy." "Call Noah," I gasped, reaching for my phone that had skittered across the floor. "And an ambulance." As my father reluctantly dialed 911, I managed to call Noah through waves of pain. "Hospital," was all I could say when he answered. Natalie pushed me down the stairs. While waiting for help, I looked up to see Natalie watching from the staircase, her expression cold and calculating. In that moment, I understood with perfect clarity that this was no accident. My own sister had deliberately risked my baby's life to prove a point. When Noah arrived minutes before the ambulance, his face went white at the sight of the blood. He dropped to his knees beside me, hands hovering helplessly. "What happened?" he demanded, looking up at my parents. "An unfortunate accident," my father began, but I cut him off. Natalie pushed me, deliberately. My voice grew stronger with the certainty of truth. She followed me upstairs, demanded I prove my pregnancy by showing her my stomach, and when I refused and tried to leave, she pushed me. Noah's expression hardened as he turned to Natalie. "Is this true?" "Of course not," she scoffed. Riley tripped. "She's being dramatic as usual." As paramedics entered and began assessing me, I caught Natalie's eye one last time. There wasn't a hint of remorse or concern, only a calculating coldness that made me shiver despite the pain. "We'll meet you at the hospital," my mother called as Noah climbed into the ambulance beside me. I closed my eyes as the doors shut, gripping Noah's hand while silently pleading with my unborn daughter to hold on. The emergency room buzzed with controlled chaos as I was wheeled in. Noah ran alongside the gurney, still clutching my hand while reciting my medical information to the intake nurse. 28-year-old female, approximately 22 weeks pregnant, fell down a flight of stairs, experiencing vaginal bleeding and abdominal pain. The medical team sprang into efficient action. A doctor appeared, Dr. Simmons according to her name tag, issuing rapid instructions while a nurse hooked up fetal monitoring equipment. "We need to check the baby first," Dr. Simmons explained, squirting cold gel on my exposed belly. "Then we'll assess you for other injuries." The portable ultrasound machine crackled with static as she moved the wand across my stomach. Each second of silence stretched into eternity as Noah and I stared at the screen, desperately searching for movement. "Please," I whispered, not even sure who I was begging. "Please." Then, finally, the rapid whooshing sound of a heartbeat. Noah's knees nearly buckled as he slumped against the bed in relief. "Heartbeat is steady," Dr. Simmons confirmed, her eyes still fixed on the screen. "But I'm seeing some separation of the placenta from the uterine wall, what we call a partial placental abruption. We need to admit you immediately." The next hours passed in a blur of medical procedures. Blood draws, monitors, medication to stop contractions, and constant ultrasound checks on the baby. By midnight, the bleeding had slowed, and Dr. Simmons delivered her assessment. "The good news is your baby's stable. The placental abruption is partial, not complete, which gives us much better odds. However," she continued, her expression serious, "you're not out of danger yet. You'll need strict bed rest for at least the next several weeks. Any additional stress or physical trauma could worsen the abruption and potentially force early delivery." "Will my baby be okay?" I asked, my voice small. "With proper care and rest, yes, I believe so. But I need to be clear, this is a serious complication. You cannot return to normal activities." Bed rest means exactly that. Noah nodded, his face drawn with worry and exhaustion. "We'll do whatever it takes." As Dr. Simmons left, a tall woman in a police uniform entered the room, introducing herself as Officer Teresa Martinez. "I understand there's a potential assault situation involving your fall," she said, pulling out a notepad. Can you tell me what happened? For the next 30 minutes, I recounted every detail of the incident. The dinner conversation, Natalie following me upstairs, her accusations, and the deliberate push that sent me tumbling down. Noah added his account of arriving to find me bleeding at the bottom of the stairs and the conflicting statements from my family. Officer Martinez took detailed notes. Given the nature of the injury and the potential harm to your unborn child, this could result in serious charges. I'll need to interview your sister and parents as well. They'll deny it, I said wearily. They always take her side. We'll investigate thoroughly, she assured me. In the meantime, focus on your recovery and your baby. A detective will likely contact you for a more detailed statement. After she left, Noah stepped into the hallway to call his parents. Through the partially open door, I heard him explaining the situation, his voice breaking when he mentioned the baby's condition. When he returned, he informed me that his parents were driving in from out of state and would arrive by morning. They want to help however they can, he said, squeezing my hand. As evening deepened into night, the hospital quieted. Noah had just stepped out to find coffee when my parents appeared in the doorway, their expressions unreadable. The nurse said you're stable, my mother said, approaching cautiously. How's the baby? Alive, despite what Natalie did, I replied, watching their reactions carefully. My father shifted uncomfortably. Can we talk about what happened? Without Noah present, a sense of foreboding settled over me, but I nodded. They pulled chairs close to the bed, and for a moment, I allowed myself to hope they'd come to offer support. Riley, my mother began, her voice gentle but firm. We spoke with Natalie about the incident. And I prompted when she paused. She explained what really happened, how you've been emotional throughout this pregnancy, how you were upset at dinner and stormed upstairs. She says she followed to make sure you were okay, and you lost your balance. I stared at them in disbelief. That's not what happened. She deliberately pushed me because I wouldn't prove my pregnancy to her. My father leaned forward. Riley, be reasonable. Why would your sister push you down the stairs? That doesn't make any sense. Because she's been undermining my pregnancy from day one. She's jealous and spiteful, and you've enabled her behavior my entire life. My voice rose despite the pain it caused. You see? My mother sighed, turning to my father. This is exactly what Natalie meant about Riley's emotional state. Pregnancy hormones can cause women to misinterpret situations. Misinterpret. I echoed incredulously. I didn't misinterpret being shoved down a flight of stairs. The police officer who was here, my father said slowly, mentioned potential charges. Serious ones. Yes. Assault at minimum. Potentially attempted harm to an unborn child. My parents exchanged glances before my mother took my hand. Her touch, once comforting in childhood, now felt like a restraint. Riley, listen to me. Family comes first. Always. We can't let a misunderstanding tear us apart. A misunderstanding that nearly killed my baby, I corrected. The doctor said the baby's fine, my father countered. The doctor said I have a placental abruption that could still result in losing my daughter. I need weeks of bed rest because of what Natalie did. My father's expression hardened. Riley, let me be perfectly clear. We will not stand by while you attempt to destroy your sister's life over an accident. It wasn't an accident. Enough. His palms slammed against the armrest. This ends now. You need to tell that police officer you fell. That it was a misunderstanding. Drop this nonsense about Natalie pushing you. I stared at him, truly seeing the depth of their denial for the first time. No. My mother's grip tightened painfully on my hand. Family comes first, Riley. Drop the charges, or you're dead to us. The words hung in the air between us, stunning in their finality. Despite years of favoritism, despite knowing their tendency to side with Natalie, I never imagined they would choose her over their unborn grandchild's safety. You're asking me to lie to protect someone who deliberately endangered my baby's life, I said slowly. Someone who could have killed her. We're asking you to remember who raised you, my father replied coldly. Who put a roof over your head and food in your mouth for 18 years. You owe us this. I owe my daughter a mother who protects her, I countered, pulling my hand from my mother's grasp. Even from family. My mother stood, gathering her purse with trembling hands. Think about what you're doing, Riley. Think about the family you're tearing apart. I'm thinking about the family I'm creating, I replied. The one I need to protect. Then you've made your choice, my father said, rising. Don't expect us at the hospital again. Don't call us when the baby comes. As far as we're concerned, you've chosen to cut yourself off from this family. They left without looking back, my mother's shoulders shaking with what might have been sobs. I stared after them, a strange calm settling over me despite the physical pain and emotional turmoil. Noah returned minutes later, stopping short when he saw my expression. What happened? I repeated the conversation verbatim, watching his face transform from shock to fury. They're protecting her even now? After she put you in the hospital? After she endangered the baby? He paced the small room, hands clenching and unclenching. I knew they favored her, but this is insane. They said I'm dead to them if I don't drop the charges. I said, the reality of it still sinking in. Noah stopped pacing and took my hand. What do you want to do? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text message. Natalie's name appeared on the screen. You should listen to Mom and Dad. Accidents happen. Drop this or things will get worse for you. I showed Noah the message, watching his expression darken further. That's a threat, he said. We're showing this to the police. As he spoke, a soft knock sounded at the door. Zoe entered carrying an overnight bag. I came as soon as Noah called. I brought your toiletries, some clothes, and those fuzzy socks you love. The simple kindness broke through my protective shock. Tears flowed freely as Zoe rushed to embrace me, careful of the 4 lines and monitors. Your parents passed me in the hallway, she said cautiously. They didn't even acknowledge me. They've disowned me, I explained, the words sounding surreal. Because I won't drop the charges against Natalie. Zoe's expression hardened. Then they don't deserve you, or this baby. She squeezed my hand. You have us. We're your family now. That night, as Noah slept uncomfortably in the hospital chair and Zoe dozed on the pull-out couch, Dr. Simmons returned for a late check. After examining me, she sat on the edge of the bed. Your blood pressure's still elevated, she said gently. The nurse mentioned family visited earlier. Did something happen? Unable to contain it any longer, I briefly explained the situation. Dr. Simmons listened without interruption. Riley, she said when I finished, as your doctor, I need to be very clear. Stress directly impacts your condition. Your priority right now must be keeping yourself calm and stable for your baby's sake. Whatever decisions you make about pressing charges, about family relationships, make them with your child's well-being as the absolute priority. As she left, I placed both hands on my belly, feeling a flutter of movement beneath my palms. I hear you, I whispered to my daughter. I choose you. Every time, I choose you. 3 days later, I was released from the hospital with strict instructions for bed rest. Noah had converted our living room into a temporary bedroom, complete with a hospital-grade bed his parents had somehow procured, a mini fridge stocked with healthy snacks, and a collection of books and streaming services within easy reach. You won't have to climb any stairs, he explained, guiding me carefully to the bed. And I can check on you easily from the kitchen or home office. Noah's company had approved his family leave request, allowing him to work remotely while caring for me. His parents, Eleanor and David, had extended their hotel stay indefinitely, bringing home-cooked meals and offering to handle household tasks. We want you both to focus on keeping that baby healthy, Eleanor insisted, arranging pillows behind my back with a tenderness that made my eyes sting with tears. A week after the incident, my follow-up appointment showed the baby remained stable. Dr. Chun, my regular obstetrician now collaborating with Dr. Simmons, reviewed the ultrasound carefully. The abruption hasn't worsened, she confirmed. But it hasn't healed either. Continued bed rest is essential, and we'll need weekly monitoring. As we left the appointment, a woman in a blazer approached us in the parking lot, introducing herself as Detective Shannon Clark. "I'd like to take your formal statement regarding the incident at your parents' home," she explained. "Would tomorrow morning work? I can come to your residence given your condition." Noah and I exchanged glances before agreeing to the meeting. The next morning, Detective Clark arrived precisely at 10, her demeanor professional but compassionate as she set up a recording device and took detailed notes. I recounted every aspect of the incident while she documented the timeline, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "I've already interviewed your parents and sister," she informed us. "Their stories align with each other but contradict yours in significant ways." "They're protecting Natalie," I said wearily. "They always have." Detective Clark nodded. "I'd like to photograph your injuries, if that's okay." The bruising along my back, shoulder, and hip had evolved into a spectacular array of purple and yellow. Noah helped me adjust my clothing as Detective Clark documented each mark. "The medical reports from the hospital indicate these injuries are consistent with a fall downstairs," she noted. "But they don't tell us whether you were pushed or fell accidentally." She threatened me via text after the incident. I reminded her, showing the message from Natalie. Detective Clark photographed the text. "This helps establish a pattern. I also understand there were no direct witnesses to the push itself."
"No.
"Just my sister and me at the top of the stairs." After the detective left, Noah and I sat in silence for several minutes, processing the weight of what we'd just done. "This won't be easy," he finally said. "Your family will fight back." As if summoned by his words, my phone rang with my father's number. When I answered, his voice was coldly formal. "I've been informed that you're proceeding with charges against your sister. I'm calling to give you one last chance to reconsider." "I'm not reconsidering," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "Natalie deliberately pushed me down the stairs and endangered my baby's life. There have to be consequences." "Then there will be consequences for you too," he stated flatly. "We've consulted an attorney. We'll fight this every step of the way. Your mother is devastated. Is that what you wanted? To break her heart?" "What I wanted was for my family to believe me and support me after I was assaulted," I replied. "What I wanted was for my parents to care about their grandchild's safety more than protecting Natalie from accountability." "You were always so dramatic, Riley. Always competing for attention with your sister. I never thought you'd go this far." The conversation ended with his promise that I would regret this decision. Minutes later, an email arrived, a detailed list of every financial contribution my parents had made to my upbringing, education, and wedding, concluding with, "We expect repayment in full should you continue this vindictive persecution of your sister." Noah read it over my shoulder, his expression darkening. "They can't be serious." "They are," I said quietly. "This is who they've always been. I just didn't want to see it." That evening, Eleanor and David arrived with dinner. Over homemade lasagna that I barely touched, I explained the latest developments. "I never understood," Eleanor said after listening intently. "All these years, when you get quiet during family discussions or change the subject when we asked about your parents. Now, it makes sense." David reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "Family isn't just blood, Riley. It's who stands by you when it matters. We're your family too, and we believe you." Their unwavering support contrasted sharply with my own parents' betrayal. That night, I called Vanessa Rodriguez, the victim advocate Detective Clark had recommended. "What you're experiencing is unfortunately common in family violence situations," Vanessa explained. "The pressure to recant, the denial, the blame shifting, these are typical patterns when families close ranks around an abuser." "Will pressing charges actually accomplish anything?" I asked. "My sister has never faced consequences before." "The legal system isn't perfect," Vanessa acknowledged. "But documenting this incident creates an official record of her behavior. It establishes boundaries and shows your sister and parents that you won't participate in the dynamics anymore. Most importantly, it shows your child that you'll always protect her, even when it's difficult." The next day, I began working with Dr. Martinez, a therapist specializing in family trauma. In our first session, she helped me identify the patterns that had defined my family relationships. What you're describing is a classic golden child/scapegoat dynamic, she explained. Your sister was the golden child who could do no wrong, while you were expected to be self-sufficient and were often blamed for family problems. But why? I asked. Why did they pick her to favor? Family dynamics like these often have deep roots, sometimes going back generations. Your parents may be repeating patterns from their own childhoods. What matters now is recognizing that you didn't cause this, you can't control it, and you can't cure it. That clarity helped as the situation continued to deteriorate. 3 days after my statement to Detective Clark, I received notification that Natalie had been arrested and charged with assault and reckless endangerment of an unborn child. She was released on bail within hours. The family implosion that followed was spectacular. My parents launched a coordinated campaign painting me as mentally unstable and attention-seeking. Extended family members I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly contacted me, some offering support, but most demanding I drop the charges to keep family business private. Childhood friends who still lived in my hometown reported that my mother was telling anyone who would listen that I had fabricated the assault because I was jealous of Natalie's recent promotion and always competing with her. My father apparently claimed I had always been troubled and the pregnancy had triggered underlying mental health issues. My phone buzzed constantly with messages ranging from concerned to hostile. Aunts, uncles, and cousins took sides, family group chats exploded with arguments, and social media became a minefield of passive-aggressive posts about loyalty and blood being thicker than water. The stress threatened my already precarious health. After my blood pressure spiked dangerously during a routine check, Noah made an executive decision to change our phone numbers and move temporarily to a ground-floor apartment in a secured building closer to the hospital. Just until after the baby comes, he insisted, arranging the move while I remained on bed rest. We need to focus on keeping you both healthy. The financial strain mounted as medical bills accumulated. Though my health insurance covered most expenses, the deductibles and copays quickly depleted our savings. Noah's family offered help, which we reluctantly accepted, but the situation remained precarious. As Thanksgiving approached, the first holiday I would spend without my biological family, the reality of our situation settled heavily. Despite the clear correctness of my decision, the loss remained painful. The night before Thanksgiving, unable to sleep, I found Noah sitting in the nursery we'd partially set up in the new apartment. I keep thinking about how different this should be, I admitted, leaning against the doorframe. My mom should be knitting baby blankets. My dad should be assembling furniture. Natalie should be planning a baby shower. Instead, they're all pretending my daughter doesn't exist because I wouldn't let Natalie get away with hurting her. Noah set down the instruction manual for the crib he'd been assembling. I know this isn't what you imagined. I'm sorry they couldn't be who you needed them to be. I'm starting to understand they never were, I replied. I was just hoping they'd change for her. I placed my hands on my growing belly. She deserved grandparents who would protect her. She has those, Noah said firmly. My parents adore her already. And she has us, parents who will always put her safety first, no matter what. As the legal process continued, my pregnancy progressed with careful monitoring. The placental abruption remained stable, not healing completely, but not worsening either. Each week that passed gave our daughter better odds if early delivery became necessary. The hardest part wasn't the physical limitations, or even the legal battle. It was confronting the painful truth that the family I'd spent a lifetime trying to please had never truly seen or valued me. But in that loss, I found an unexpected strength, the fierce, unwavering determination to break the cycle for my daughter. She would never have to earn love that should be freely given. She would never be compared to a sibling and found wanting. She would grow up knowing her worth wasn't tied to achievements or compliance. And most importantly, she would always be believed and protected, even when it came at great personal cost. That realization brought a strange sense of peace amidst the chaos. As Dr. Martinez pointed out in one of our sessions, sometimes the most loving thing we can do for our children is to show them that boundaries matter, that their safety matters, that they matter, even when standing up for them is difficult. With each passing day of my pregnancy, that truth became my anchor. Whatever happened with the legal case, whatever relationships were permanently severed, I had already made the decision that mattered most: to protect my daughter, even from family. 3 months later, I sat in a courtroom at 8 months pregnant, my hands resting protectively over my prominent belly. The preliminary hearing for Natalie's case had been scheduled, delayed, and rescheduled multiple times before finally proceeding. Noah sat beside me, his presence steady and reassuring as we waited. When Natalie entered with her attorney, my breath caught. Though we'd been apart only months, she somehow looked like a stranger, her familiar features arranged in an expression of practiced victimhood. Behind her, my parents filed in, taking seats directly behind her in a visual display of solidarity. They didn't acknowledge my presence, though my mother's eyes flickered briefly toward my belly before looking away. The proceedings felt simultaneously endless and too quick. The prosecutor presented the medical evidence, detailed documentation of my injuries, the placental abruption, the ongoing high-risk status of my pregnancy. The defense countered with character witnesses praising Natalie's gentle nature and community involvement, suggesting I had fabricated the assault due to long-standing sibling rivalry exacerbated by pregnancy hormones. When the judge announced there was sufficient evidence to proceed to trial, a small gasp escaped my mother. I remained still, experiencing neither triumph nor satisfaction, only a weary relief that the truth was being acknowledged by someone in authority. Outside the courtroom, I came face to face with my parents for the first time since the hospital. My father's expression remained stony, while my mother's eyes filled with tears. "You could still stop this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's not too late to bring this family back together." "It was too late the moment you chose to protect someone who endangered your grandchild," I replied quietly. "I'm not doing this to punish Natalie. I'm doing it because actions have consequences, and my daughter deserves better than a family who would sacrifice her safety." Noah gently guided me away, his hand supportive at the small of my back as we left the courthouse. The encounter left me shaken but more certain than ever of my decision. As my due date approached, my focus shifted increasingly toward my daughter's imminent arrival. The nursery in our new apartment came together piece by piece, a sage-green sanctuary with woodland creatures painted on the walls, a gift from Noah's sister Melissa, who had discovered a hidden artistic talent. "I want it to feel magical," Melissa explained as she added delicate details to a painted fox. "A special place just for her." The community we'd built around us continued to expand in unexpected ways. Vanessa from my prenatal yoga class, which I'd had to abandon for bed rest, regularly brought healthy freezer meals and stayed to chat about baby preparations. Noah's coworkers organized a virtual baby shower, sending gifts and supportive messages. Our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who had raised 5 children of her own, offered wisdom that bridged cultural differences while acknowledging universal parenting truths. "Family, not always blood," she told me one afternoon while teaching me to fold dumplings, my one allowed kitchen activity according to Dr. Chen. "Family is who make your heart safe. Remember this for baby." Weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Martinez helped me process the ongoing grief of family estrangement while preparing mentally for motherhood. "You're mourning the family you wished you had," she explained during one particularly difficult session. "Not the family that actually exists. There's an important distinction there." Noah attended couples counseling with me, working through his own anger at my family while learning how to support me without taking over. "I want to fix everything," he admitted during one session. "But I'm learning that sometimes support just means witnessing your pain without trying to solve it." The trial itself proceeded with excruciating slowness. Testimony from medical experts confirmed the intentional nature of my injuries, while character witnesses from both sides painted drastically different pictures of our family dynamics. The most difficult day came when my parents took the stand as witnesses for Natalie. Their testimony portrayed me as the problematic sister, competitive, attention-seeking, and emotionally unstable. They described a childhood that bore little resemblance to my lived experience, casting Natalie as the perpetual victim of my alleged jealousy. Riley has always resented her sister's natural charm, my mother testified, avoiding my gaze across the courtroom. The pregnancy seemed to intensify these feelings. My father spoke of my tendency toward dramatic exaggeration and history of blaming others for accidents. Each word felt like another tie being severed, another illusion about my family dissolving. When the verdict finally came, guilty on both counts, I felt hollow rather than vindicated. The judge sentenced Natalie to 3 years probation, community service, and mandatory counseling. A restraining order was issued, legally enforcing the distance that had already formed between us. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered for statements. While Natalie and my parents huddled with their attorney, Noah and I prepared to leave quietly through a side entrance. Before we could, my parents approached one last time. "Are you satisfied now?" my father asked, his voice tight with anger. "You've destroyed your sister's future. Ruined her reputation. Is that what you wanted?" "What I wanted was for my sister not to push me down the stairs," I replied evenly. "What I wanted was for my parents to care that their grandchild was endangered. What I wanted was the family I thought I had." My mother's face crumpled. "Please, Riley. We can still fix this. We're your family." For a moment, looking at her tear-streaked face, I felt the pull of old patterns, the lifelong habit of accommodating, of making myself smaller to keep peace. Then I felt a strong kick for my daughter, a reminder of what was truly at stake. "No," I said, the words simple but definitive. "You chose Natalie over my baby's safety. That was your decision, and these are the consequences." My father's expression hardened. "Then it's official. As far as we're concerned, we have one daughter." "And as far as I'm concerned," I replied, my hand resting on my belly, "my daughter will have one set of grandparents who actually put her well-being first." We parted without further words. Walking to the car with Noah, I felt a strange lightness despite the finality of the rupture. That evening, our small circle of genuine supporters gathered for dinner. Noah's parents, his sister Melissa, my friend Zoe, Vanessa from prenatal class, and even Mrs. Chen. "To chosen family," Zoe toasted, raising her glass of sparkling cider to match everyone else's. "The people who show up when it matters." That night, as Noah slept beside me, I felt the first unmistakable contractions begin. Placing a hand on my belly, I whispered to my daughter, "Perfect timing. One chapter ends, another begins." 1 year later, I sat in our backyard garden watching Noah chase our 7-month-old daughter Olivia across the grass. Her delighted giggles filled the air as she crawled with surprising speed, determined to explore every inch of her world. "She's definitely got your determination," Noah laughed, scooping her up and blowing raspberries on her chubby cheeks. Looking at Olivia's healthy, thriving body, it was difficult to reconcile her vibrant presence with the precarious beginning of her life. After that night of first contractions, my labor had progressed rapidly, too rapidly for a high-risk pregnancy. The placental abruption had worsened during delivery, resulting in an emergency C-section and several terrifying minutes when Olivia's heartbeat couldn't be located. When her indignant cry finally filled the operating room, the collective relief was palpable. At 6 pounds even, she was smaller than average but perfectly formed, with a full head of dark hair and what the nurses called fighting spirit as she grabbed at monitoring equipment. We'd purchased this small house in a family-friendly neighborhood 4 months after her birth, wanting a fresh start in a space that held no memories of the turmoil surrounding her arrival. The mortgage stretched our budget, but the sense of permanence and security it provided felt essential. My mental health had improved significantly since Olivia's birth. The postpartum period brought its challenges, but continued therapy helped me navigate the complex emotions of new motherhood without the traditional family support system I'd once envisioned. "You're building something new," Dr. Martinez reminded me during sessions. "Something healthier for Olivia. That's a gift that transcends generations." The letter arrived on an ordinary Tuesday, a cream-colored envelope addressed in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a note from my father's sister, Aunt Patricia, requesting a meeting. Though we'd never been particularly close, she had sent a small gift when Olivia was born, the only acknowledgement from my extended family. After careful consideration and discussion with Noah, I agreed to meet her at a cafe halfway between our homes. When she arrived, I was struck by how much she resembled my father, though her expression held a warmth his rarely showed. "Thank you for coming," she began, after ordering coffee and admiring photos of Olivia. "I've wanted to reach out for months, but I needed to be certain I wouldn't make things worse." "Worse than complete estrangement?" I asked, not unkindly. "Family estrangement isn't unfamiliar territory for me," she replied, surprising me. "Your father and I didn't speak for nearly a decade when we were younger." Over the next 2 hours, Patricia shared family history I'd never known. How my paternal grandmother had displayed the same favoritism toward my father that he later showed Natalie. How Patricia had been the difficult child who questioned and challenged, while my father had been protected and elevated. "The patterns repeat unless someone consciously breaks them," she explained. "Your father recreated the dynamic he grew up with, creating a golden child and a scapegoat. It wasn't about you or Natalie as individuals. It was about roles he understood from his own childhood." "That explains it, but doesn't excuse it," I said quietly. "No, it doesn't," she agreed. "Understanding the pattern doesn't justify the harm. I just thought knowing might help you make sense of something that never made sense." Patricia had reconnected with my father in later years, but maintained careful boundaries. "I couldn't trust him with my heart again, but I could have a limited relationship with clear expectations," she explained. "Though after seeing how they've handled this situation with you, I've stepped back again." That conversation provided pieces of a puzzle I hadn't realized was incomplete. The generational nature of our family dysfunction didn't erase the pain, but it offered context that helped me release some of the lingering questions about why I had never been enough. As Christmas approached, Olivia's first, Noah and I discussed how to create meaningful traditions that would form the foundation of her childhood memories. "I want to focus on experiences rather than things," I suggested as we decorated a small tree in our living room. "Building memories together rather than just accumulating stuff." "I love that," Noah agreed, carefully hanging a baby's first Christmas ornament. "And I want her to understand that family is about how people treat each other, not just shared DNA." Noah's parents joined us for the holiday, bringing thoughtfully chosen gifts and their infectious joy at being grandparents. Eleanor had taken to the role with particular enthusiasm, knitting tiny sweaters and reading parenting books with the same intensity she'd once devoted to her engineering career. "I always wanted a daughter," she confided one evening while helping me fold laundry. "Getting you was worth the wait." My friend circle had evolved into something that functioned as extended family. Zoe was Olivia's godmother in all but official title, visiting weekly and documenting every milestone with professional quality photographs. Melissa had become the fun aunt who brought inappropriate for her age toys that Olivia invariably loved. Our neighbor, Mrs. Chin, insisted on teaching me her family recipes for the baby to know her culture, creating a beautiful cross-cultural exchange that enriched our lives. Through mutual acquaintances, I occasionally heard updates about Natalie and my parents. She had moved to another state shortly after the trial, reportedly working at a boutique and doing well despite what she'd been through. My parents visited her regularly according to their social media posts, which never mentioned Olivia or me. There were still moments when grief caught me unexpectedly, seeing a grandmother with a baby in the park, or hearing Olivia laugh in a way that echoed Natalie's childhood giggle. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that grieving the family relationships I'd lost was natural and healthy. "You're mourning what could have been," she explained. "The grandparents Olivia should have had. The aunt who might have loved her. The relationship with your sister that never existed except in your hopes." The legal aspects of our situation had reached their conclusion with a permanent restraining order that prohibited Natalie from contacting me or coming near Olivia. The document provided legal protection, but the emotional boundaries I'd established gave me genuine peace. As the anniversary of the estrangement approached, Noah suggested a small ritual to acknowledge the pain while reaffirming our path forward. Holding on to anger takes energy. You could use loving Olivia, he said one evening. Not forgetting or forgiving what they did, but releasing the daily burden of it. Together, we wrote letters expressing our unspoken thoughts to my family, not to send, but to articulate feelings that needed release. In our backyard fire pit, we burned the letters while stating intentions for our future as a family. I released the need for approval from people who cannot give it, I said, watching the paper curl and blacken. I choose to build a family based on respect, truth, and genuine love. Returning to work part-time had given me a renewed sense of identity beyond motherhood. My marketing firm had created a flexible position that allowed me to balance career and family without sacrifice. The independence and creative fulfillment fed a part of me that parenthood alone couldn't satisfy. In quieter moments, I sometimes thought about the name we'd chosen for our daughter. Olivia, after Noah's grandmother who had modeled unconditional love throughout his childhood. Her middle name, Grace, honored my favorite college professor who had believed in me when my own family didn't. Together, they represented the influences that had shaped me outside my family of origin. During those months of rebuilding, I'd started an online support group for others experiencing family estrangement. What began as 3 people sharing experiences had grown to over 30 members, creating a community for those navigating the particular grief of choosing health over harmful family ties. You've helped me understand I'm not betraying my family by protecting myself, one woman wrote. I'm actually honoring the true meaning of family by refusing to participate in abuse. As Olivia began showing her personality, stubborn, joyful, curious about everything, I started writing her letters to be opened in the future. They documented not just milestones but the values we hoped to instill, including the truth about her family history. Someday you may have questions about why you don't know your maternal grandparents or aunt, I wrote. The simple answer is that they couldn't put your safety above their own needs and patterns. The complicated answer is that family isn't always defined by blood, but by those who choose to love you completely, without conditions or comparison. On Olivia's first birthday, surrounded by people who had shown up consistently throughout the challenging year, I felt a sense of completion. The family gathered around our dining table wasn't the one I'd been born into, but it was the one I'd chosen and built with intention. Later that evening, after guests had departed and Olivia slept peacefully in her crib, Noah found me sitting on the porch swing, watching fireflies blink in the summer darkness. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, settling beside me. "I was just thinking about family," I replied. How the word means something completely different to me now than it did a year ago. Better different or worse different? I considered this carefully before answering. True or different? Family isn't who shares your blood or name. It's who makes you feel safe enough to be completely yourself. Who celebrates your joy without envy and supports you through pain without judgment. Noah's arm tightened around my shoulders as we gently swung in comfortable silence. Sometimes, I continued, protecting those you love means making the hardest choices. Choices that hurt in the moment but create space for something healthier to grow. Looking out at the yard where Olivia would take her first steps, have her first friendships, and grow into herself, I felt profound gratitude for the painful wisdom of the past year. The family I'd lost had never truly seen or accepted me. The family we were building would offer Olivia something I'd never had, the security of unconditional love and the freedom to become herself without fear. What do you think about family relationships? Have you ever had to cut contact with toxic family members for your own well-being? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more content about setting boundaries and building healthy relationships. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember, sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we're born into.